I'm Mark.
And I'm Josh.
And this is Alter Ego Comics TV, episode number 70. It is a ginormous week for comics. When is it not a ginormous week for comics? Thanks to the publishers publishing everything under the sun, it's always a ginormous week for comics. But we've got a huge battle royal going this week with DC putting out Batman number 8, which is the first part of the Night of the Owl storyline. Marvel has Avengers vs. X-Men 2, among other things, and let it begin. Batman number 8, again, Night of the Owls part 1. Real feeling of action and suspense to this issue. It just was awesome. I feel like we're running out of adjectives to describe Scott Snyder's work on Batman and his other books. And one of the cool things about this book is we get a backup story with art by Raphael Albuquerque, Scott Snyder's cohort on American Vampire. And I love the way he draws the Gotham City characters. I'm so used to seeing him draw vampires and people within the American Vampire universe. It's nice to see him get to play in the mainstream DC universe. And whether you've been reading Snyder's Batman from issue number 1 or you've been waiting for an opportunity to jump in, issue number 8 is the one to pick up. It is all around awesome. The first part, is it 9 parts? I don't remember how many parts it is, but it's a crossover within all of the Bat family books in starting from now through the end of May, I believe. So issues 8 and 9 of most of these books. In some cases, it's just issue 9.
We've got a checklist at the store.
Yeah, there's a checklist at the store. It's not in my head. But it just rocks. As I said, there's a real sense of danger and a major threat to Batman that you don't get a lot of times because you get these goofy villains and you've seen them 100 times before. The Court of Owls is something brand new that Snyder came up with, and it's freaky, and it involves lots of different people, and people are going to be dead. They're going to end up dead. In fact, some people end up dead in this issue. So that's that. Do you have anything to add to that?
No. Okay. No, that's all I have. It was awesome. The Court of Owls is a credible threat. I mean, one Talon managed to beat the snot out of Bruce over the last arc and nearly drove him mad with the drugs and stuff, and now he's got a whole army of Talons descending upon him, holding up in Wayne Manor. And I do like that the backup story doesn't, it's not actually, I guess, a backup story. It's kind of the second part of the story. The issue ends and the backup story picks up right from there. So it kind of, you have a little mini cliffhanger and then it starts again and you get another cliffhanger at the end of the issue. But no, very solid. Night of the Owls is cool.
Okay.
Now we're moving on to something else that's cool about Night of the Owls. Nightwing number 8. This isn't technically part of the crossover, but it totally is. They're calling it a prelude to Night of the Owls. Sequentially, I would probably read Batman and then all of the other Bat titles this week because these scenes at the end of Batman sort of set up some interplay in other Bat titles, including Nightwing. But Nightwing was super awesome because one of the things I really like is a sense of history. And the majority, well, no, not the majority, about half this issue is sort of flashbacks telling the story of one specific Talon that's coming after Grayson for the Night of the Owls. That thing, right. And it's very cool. It's set, the first half of the century, it shows the progression of this person's life and what goes into becoming a Talon. We've seen bits and pieces before with the book and the Haley Circus, and it's very cool to kind of have these crazed zombie killers be people, see what it takes to put yourself in a position where you're like, yeah, I want to become a zombie killer. That seems like fun. And just, Higgins has been knocking it out of the park on Nightwing, and this is a great setup for Court of the Owls?
Night of
the Owls.
Why is this so hard?
Yes. I'm just going to keep saying it. Repetition will make them remember it. And me remember it. But
Nightwing really is one of the best of the New 52. Batman gets a lot of the press, a lot of the praise. Nightwing is almost as good, nearly as good, written by Snyder's co-writer or co-conspirator on Gates of Gotham, Kyle Higgins. And as Josh said, he's just doing an amazing job. And Eddie Barrows has been doing the artwork from the beginning, and again, it's just drawing a great-looking book. So, as I mentioned, Gates of Gotham, if you have not read Gates of Gotham, it is available in softcover, and really lays some of the groundwork to what we're seeing with the Court of Owls and Night of the Owls. It's a lot of Gotham City history. In fact, the issue of Nightwing directly references a lot of stuff that happens in Gates of Gotham, so would highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Gates of Gotham is a prequel to the Owl stuff, but it definitely gives you a sense of the history of Gotham, and it's a great read in and of itself. It's a fun Batman book.
Speaking of fun books, Manhattan Projects number 2. Manhattan Projects is a fun book. You don't know what Hickman is going to throw at you. It's a wacky, zany, alternate history crazy stuff.
It's a wacky book with physics jokes.
Yeah, it's Hickman is. I'm not smart enough to read this book. It's just crazy. We left off with Oppenheimer in issue number 1 and the twist at the end, which I still won't mention because some of you may not have read issue number 1.
But issue number 1 is back in stock in the second printing.
Is now in
so
stock.
Your redemption is available at Alter Ego Comics.
We will redeem you at Alter Ego. But I was expecting a continuation of that storyline, and he kind of took a 90-degree turn, and he introduced a new character, another new scientist who's an actual scientist. Josh is doing all the research on Manhattan Projects. He's checking out to see who these people actually were.
That's how it is when you read a Jonathan Hickman book. Now you have like homework. You have to go figure out who these people were.
It's crazy.
It's nuts.
But it was great to see some new characters introduced. We have more for Albert Einstein to do in this book, which is a plus. He just kind of sat there in the previous issue and looked like he normally does, but he speaks.
Well, he managed to be awesome last issue,
he
not
was
doing
awesome
anything.
Without doing anything,
which was an accomplishment.
And we get Flower Power Hitler. So if you're looking for that sort of action, again, this takes place in the early 1940s, and so it's got World War II going on. It's got FDR. It's got crazy Stargate-like time travel things or gateways that you can go through. Just there's no way to effectively describe Manhattan Project, so you just need to pick it up for yourself.
Yeah, it's a great sort of not necessarily a history lesson, because many of the names and faces have been changed, but it's a great look at the what it was like to live in the world at that time. You have a slight kind of moral conversation almost about the use of Nazi scientists, former Nazis coming to America to work on the space program, work on other physics stuff, to work on the bomb, to defeat Japan and scare the Russians. And it's great. It's at once very poignant and very interesting portrayal of American society at the time, but it's also at the same time you have Flower Power Hitler and crazy Einstein.
Right,
and
you get like BPRD elements, which we talked about with the first issue. So on the one hand, it's historically accurate to a certain degree, and then you've got crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's really an eclectic mixture, and it's just so much fun. You should absolutely check it out. Definitely and absolutely became definitely. Also on the radar is Invincible Iron Man 515. Invincible Iron Man has been really awesome. It's really the book that made Matt Fraction a star at Marvel, justifiably. And he has this tendency when he tells stories. The first arc was not weak, but very much groundwork laying. And then we came to the awesome thing with Norman Osborn hunting Tony around the planet and making him the world's most wanted. And there was then Tony dies and comes back, and you have a very kind of a wave function going on. And we're getting back to the peak. Stuff is going down. Tony's on camera having been drunk. The government wants to regulate his use of Iron Man, which, as we all know now, is like inside his bones. So there's sort of a personal freedom thing going on there. You've got Pepper discredited before the press. You've got Rhodey in this issue going up against a number of Iron Man villains, and it's a tough fight for him. But it's definitely building to a peak. You've got Stain and the Mandarin working together to bring down, with the Hammer Girls.
Hammer time.
To bring down Stark Resilient and Stark and Tony. And it's just, Invincible Iron Man is so good. I feel bad for those of you who aren't reading it, which is most of you, honestly. But Invincible Iron Man, super awesome. If you just want to pop in for the cool actiony stuff, this is where you should start at 515.
Rocketeer Adventures, Volume 2, Number 2, makes my list yet again. Again, I think every issue of Rocketeer Adventures has been on my list. We get stories this time around by Paul Dini, one of the creators of Batman the Animated Series. We get a story by Walt Simonson, written by Walt Simonson. Artwork by Bill Morrison, who's done a lot of Simpsons work, and John Paul Leon, who did who did Earth X and some other stuff back at Marvel that I wasn't crazy about at the time, but his work in this issue of Rocketeer Adventures was awesome. Loved his artwork in the story, which I don't want to give too much away, but somebody is getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in the 1940s, and the Rocketeer and his girlfriend go there, and he ends up having to save this Hollywood starlet, who is a starlet that you will recognize. So it was very cool. We get a pinup by J. Scott Campbell. His stuff is always nice to look at. It's just a great nostalgia book. There's no other way to say that. And part of it may be my emotional connection to the movie The Rocketeer and the fact that I've read the original material, but really this can be picked up by anybody who likes a good action adventure story with great writing and solid artwork. It's just that good.
Yeah, honestly, and I think one of my favorite parts about the Adventures series is the rotating creative cast. I mean, you've got top-notch writers coming in, and they're not signing on to do a 4-issue arc. They're doing a 6 or a 4-page story, and it's interesting. It's almost like they get to tell the story they have. They aren't forced into other strictures, and it's great. Every story, in a lot of ways, all Rocketeer stories are very similar. You have your kind of adventure-y cast. He's going to put on a jetpack and fly, probably. But they've managed to each one be unique and interesting, and I'm amazed that they're continuing to do it. It's just a great book, and I don't have the connection you do to Rocketeer. I just think it's fun. It's a good book to read, even with no background at all.
Yeah.
Rocketeer's cool. Next up, speaking of things that are cool, Punisher number 10. This continues out of the Omega Effect, which started last week in Avenging Spider-Man, and we're continuing to be written by Greg Rucka and Mark Waid, who are super awesome.
This is just Greg Rucka.
Nope, it's both.
You sure?
I'm very sure.
All right.
It's both.
It's just Greg Rucka.
Okay, it might just be Greg Rucka credited, but in every interview he said they wrote all the issues together.
Okay.
So it's Greg Rucka and Mark Waid.
Look in the credits.
But no, it's very cool. We've basically still got a 3-way team up with Spider-Man, Punisher, and Daredevil. And it's really interesting. These characters have interacted a lot over the last, the next 30, 40 years they've been around in comics. And their relationships have changed a bit. It's not necessarily that the relationship has changed, it's the way things like this are portrayed in the comics. We're really getting to a time where writers are getting much more into psychological backgrounds, into the idea behind the relationships between the characters. It's how would Matt Murdock, he's a paragon of legality who goes out at night and beats people up in his underwear. How would he react to the Punisher, who kills people more or less indiscriminately as long as they're bad? And it's very interesting the way they lay out the relationships, and they don't do anything overt. The number of lines of dialogue in this whole comic, except for those from Spider-Man, who's loquacious, the number of lines of dialogue could be counted on 2 hands. But they managed to convey so much in the short lines you get. You see Matt almost feels like he blames himself for not saving Frank from going down this road of death and destruction. And he's kind of trying to step in to Frank's cohort, the new girl that was introduced at the beginning of the the beginning of the Punisher run, whose whole family was murdered, and she's kind of headed down that path, and Matt's trying to save her. So it's kind of an interesting tug of war, 2 people fighting over one woman's soul. Plus they punch some bad guys, and it's just Daredevil, Punisher, Waid, Rucka, Spider-Man. What's not to like?
I agree. Also from Marvel, this week again, the 800-pound gorilla is Avengers vs. X-Men number 2. And Marvel, it's a very solid start to Marvel's big event book for the summer, for the spring, summer, the fall, whenever. And the stage is set, as you're reading this, for the first issue of the Versus companion book, which comes out next week. They basically, I think they're purposely showing us little panels of, Red Hulk versus Colossus, and Iron Man versus Magneto, and Cyclops versus Captain America. And it's just enough to get us interested, and then we're gone and doing something else. So the Versus book, again, the companion book, is going to fill in or expand upon those fights, which apparently lots of Marvel fanboys and comic fanboys and girls always talk about who would win in a fight. I don't think I've ever done that. I always hear that that, fans are crazy about this stuff. I'll check it out, but, whatever. So, real solid start, and then we've got 2 tie-ins this week, too. We've got Avengers number 25, and again, this is an emotional attachment issue for me. This is the return of Walt Simonson to drawing at Marvel. And, he's most famous probably for his run on Thor that introduced Beta Ray Bill, that just was so awesome, where he was writing and drawing the book. And to have him drawing the new incarnation of Thor, basically in a new costume, a Thor that has advanced and matured from the 30 years from the last time Simonson worked on him, was just awesome. Seeing his artwork, it's a little bit different, but not necessarily different in a bad way. And there were definitely pages and panels where it just looked like classic Walt Simonson stuff, and I loved it. It is, again, a tie-in to Avengers vs. X-Men. And then the other tie-in this week is Wolverine and the X-Men number 9. And I personally, as a huge Wolverine fan, am loving this new mature version of Wolverine. Mature to a certain extent. You know, he still loses it and he still has his berserker rage, but he's a much more fatherly figure or older brother figure rather than just the annoying cousin that goes off and kills people and goes crazy.
You guys have those cousins, right? That's not just our...
But there's some great character moments between Wolverine and Iddy or whatever her name is from Schism, the one that...
I always pronounce it Iddy, but I don't know if that's
I think
right.
it's Iddy. And Wolverine and Beast, and there's some great stuff with Gladiator, and Kid Gladiator is just awesome too. So it's no surprise that Wolverine and the X-Men made the cut, but it's something that you should definitely pick up if you're reading the core series of Avengers versus X-Men.
And what I liked about Avengers vs. X-Men too is it very much whetted the palette. You know, a lot of the promo stuff we've seen was these pairings. You know, the Colossus and Red Hulk, the Steve and Scott, the Stark and the White Queen, and all of those fights, or at least in some cases, all of the promo images we saw are in this issue. So it's making me wonder. There's 10 issues to go. Or where's it going to go? It's definitely
it could go anywhere, and
yeah,
that's the beauty of the series is that I think everybody feels like Marvel needs to chalk up a win. They need to bring their A game with this because DC, frankly, trounced them with the New 52 when they unveiled that back in September. So the buzz is that Marvel's going to do something big and awesome and world changing. What that is, we don't know. But there's definitely a feeling of anything can happen in this book, which you don't get a lot of times in mainstream comics.
Also new this week, we have Shadow number 1. This is written by Garth Ennis. It's a new Shadow series from Dynamite Entertainment, right?
Yes.
And it's very cool. I really liked it. I don't have a huge connection to the Shadow. I've seen, I think, most of the Alec Baldwin movie, and I've seen some of the old serials and stuff. But I couldn't tell you a paragraph worth of things about Lamont Cranston. Matter of fact, that's all I know is that's his name. Something with a hat. But the book was very cool. Initially, I was a little trepidatious because the first arc is kind of... or not the first arc, I'm sorry. The first part of the story is sort of setting the tone in the time period with Japan and China and World War II, or the precursor to World War II from the U.S.'s point of view. And it was very interesting, but once you get into it, you feel that he's kind of setting the story in a place and time. It's very cool. It's not as pulpy as I expected. It's almost more of a more elegant tale, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's dark, but it's Garth Ennis, so that should not be a surprise. It's not Garth Ennis Punisher Max or Garth Ennis The Boys or
for Garth Ennis, this is almost light.
But it's definitely got a more serious tone than the Alec Baldwin film, which was the extent of my experience with The Shadow. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and the artwork was solid. And there's a lot of there are a lot of Shadow fans out there. It'd be nice to see a series grab hold of them and be able to continue. Anytime you see a creator of Ennis's abilities come on board a book like this, you wonder, is he going to be on for 4 issues, 6 issues, 12 issues? How long is he going to be on for? But I hope he stays for a while because the first issue was really good.
Very cool.
And I think we're going to go back to you.
Back to me?
Yep.
All right, Wonder Woman number 8. Wonder Woman's still awesome. I'm going to keep telling you that until you believe me.
The end.
Basically, yeah. It's continuing this very cool Greek thing. It started as a Greek mythology, Greek tragedy kind of stuff, and it's just gotten more complex and more involved, and it's a really engaging book. You've got these portrayals of classic characters that have been around for literally thousands of years, like Pluto and Hermes, and you've got versions that they're easily recognizable, but they're also slightly twisted, slightly different, especially... And the art, like you look at it and like you immediately go, oh, that's clearly Hermes, but there's something off about it that makes it more interesting, kind of engages you. And this sees Wonder Woman descending into the underworld, arming herself in Hephaestus's forge and descending into the underworld to save a soul and bring someone back from the dead. And spoiler alert, it doesn't go the way you might hope. But very cool. Azrael is just knocking it out of the park with Wonder Woman. It's easily the most different book of the New 52. It's the character that was around before that's around now, and I was going to say it's a 180-degree turn. It's not even on the same radius. It's over freaking here, but it's great, and you should totally check it out if you're a Wonder Woman fan or if you like things that are good.
We only talk about good things, by the way.
Mostly, yeah.
Speaking of good things, we've got some great events coming up right around the corner here. We have a movie screening of Comic-Con Episode 4 on Friday, April 27th. We've got Rafael Rosado coming in to sign for Giants Beware. He's the artist on Giants Beware on Saturday, April 28th. And, of course, Free Comic Book Day on Saturday, May 5th. You can find out more about all these events on our Facebook page, and you can RSVP for the events as well. And we've got some perks that we're throwing out there for people who actually RSVP via Facebook. So like us on Facebook and check those events out, and let us know if there's anything that you'd like to see at Alter Ego Comics. That does it for this 70th episode. Like, this is a special episode. A very special episode of Alter Ego Comics TV. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you next time.